Welcome to Getting Played, the series that exposes how the gaming industry has turned you into their personal lab rat. Every day, millions of players boot up their games and think that they're having fun. But what if I told you that every quest marker, every completion percentage, every just one more collectible was specifically designed to exploit your brain's reward systems? What if modern gaming isn't about entertainment anymore? What if it was about behavioral manipulation disguised as play? The gaming industry has spent decades perfecting the art of psychological exploitation. They've studied your dopamine responses, weaponized your completionist tendencies, and turned your free time into unpaid digital labor. Meanwhile, they've convinced you that paying $70 for a spreadsheet simulator is getting your money's worth. From quest systems that turn exploration into chores, to pricing strategies that resurrect dead economic theories, to psychological tricks that make slot machines look ethical, the industry has been playing you harder than you've been playing their games. And once you understand how these systems work, you can't unsee them. You'll start recognizing when you're being manipulated. You'll demand better. You'll remember what gaming used to be about: genuine discovery, meaningful choices, and actual fun. So welcome to this series of videos called Getting Played. It's time to stop being the one getting played, and it's time to go back to playing video games. At the risk of really dating myself here, do you remember when games were about adventure, not chores? When exploring a virtual world felt like genuine discovery instead of checking items off a productivity app that somehow costs $70? If you've played Dragon Age Inquisition, you've experienced firsthand how modern game design has transformed players into unpaid workers, basically turning us into digital peasants mindlessly completing busy work that would make a medieval feudal lord proud. Dragon Age Inquisition became the poster child for what critics called single-player MMO, a damning indictment that perfectly captures how quest systems designed for managing thousands of concurrent players somehow became the template for solo adventures. And I'm going to be picking on Dragon Age Inquisition here, but don't make the mistake of thinking it was the only one. Skyrim does the same thing. Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning does the same thing. Final Fantasy VII Remake does the same thing. It's like taking a city bus route and forcing one person to ride it alone while still stopping at every single stop. Dragon Age Inquisition's creative director Mike Laidlaw later admitted the brutal truth. Dragon Age Inquisition's open world was a little hollow. It also wasn't an open world, with, quote, pacing problems for completionist players. Translation: we accidentally made Microsoft Excel with dragons and people noticed. But this isn't just about one disappointing game. It's about a fundamental shift in how we think about interactive entertainment, from crafted experiences to algorithmic content generation, from player agency to behavioral manipulation, from genuine exploration to spreadsheet completion. The quest system epidemic represents nothing less than the industrialization of play itself. It's like we took the worst parts of office work and said, you know what this needs? Orcs. To really understand how we got here, we need to go back to 1999 and EverQuest, the first successful 3D MMORPG, and Patient Zero for what would become gaming's greatest plague since motion controls. The infamous action number object quest template didn't emerge from creative vision. It was born from technical necessity and economic constraints. Server capacity was limited, bandwidth was precious, and thousands of players needed content that could be rapidly generated without complex scripting. The Kill 10 Wolves quest wasn't art. It was industrial efficiency. These templates served a very specific purpose. They provided measurable objectives that worked across language barriers, required minimal server resources, and could be implemented quickly. As a bonus, a player completing the objective would not impede another player from completing that objective. For MMORPGs managing thousands of concurrent players, it made perfect sense. It was like fast food for the brain, cheap, efficient, and about as nutritious as you'd expect. World of Warcraft came along and refined the system after a crucial revelation during alpha testing. As quest designer Jeff Kaplan explained, they discovered that players immediately asked, "What's next?" after completing quests, rather than simply grinding monsters like they did in EverQuest. The solution was quest chains that provided constant guidance and predictable rewards, turning the game into a sophisticated task management system. Blizzard basically invented Pavlovian conditioning for gamers, and we all lined up asking for more. These systems, though, were designed for a specific context. MMOs needed to manage massive populations, prevent server congestion, and maintain engagement across hundreds of hours of gameplay. The mechanical nature of these quests was a feature, not a bug, and it served the unique constraints of persistent online worlds. But it's like using duct tape to fix a car. It works in an emergency, but you probably shouldn't build your entire automotive philosophy around doing that. Then the tragedy truly began in earnest between 2010 and 2015, when developers started copying MMO mechanics without understanding their original purpose. The success of Skyrim in 2011 proved that open world design could work in single-player games, but instead of learning from its environmental storytelling and emergent gameplay, studios fixated on content volume and completion metrics. Because why focus on making something good when you can make something big? Dragon Age Inquisition perfectly exemplifies this contamination. It also perfectly exemplifies the survival crafting bullshit that infected every single game and seems to continue infecting games at random despite not adding anything of quality to those games, but that's a story for another day. BioWare, reacting to criticism about Dragon Age 2's reused environments, decided to create their largest game ever. But instead of handcrafting meaningful content, they imported MMO design, vast zones with very sparse content, fetch quests requiring collection of multiple items, and a power currency that forced players to complete side quests in order to progress the main story. It's like they looked at the worst parts of MMOs and said, you know what? Let's make this mandatory, including the waiting. Some of the things to progress the story required 8 hours or more, 24 hours of waiting in a single-player game. The result was what players immediately recognized as a single-player MMO, a game that felt designed for multiple players but trapped you in solitary digital labor. As one person noted, the game's maps felt static, with little else to do other than running around doing a collectathon. It completely lacked character. It was like playing an MMO where everyone else had logged off, leaving you alone with nothing but fetch quests and your crushing existential dread. Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning provides an even more stark example because it was originally developed to be an MMO. And because of that, it featured oversized zones designed for multiple players, which created vast spaces that felt lonely and hollow when experienced alone. When they realized they didn't have the funds to create an MMO, they converted it into a single-player game, and the game design itself, the fundamental gameplay loop that players do in order to play the game, did not change. The quest design prioritized quantity over quality, turning what should have been an epic adventure into a mind-numbing checklist. The most insidious aspect of this contamination isn't just boring gameplay, it's how these systems exploit fundamental psychological mechanisms to keep players engaged despite diminishing returns. Modern quest design leverages the same principles that make gambling addictive and workplace surveillance effective. Basically, game developers accidentally reinvented the worst parts of capitalism and called it engagement. The Zygarnik effect explains why unfinished tasks remain prominent in memory, which creates psychological tension that drives continued play. MMOs deliberately exploit this by ensuring task lists never end. Each completion immediately spawns new objectives, trapping players in cycles of artificial urgency. It's like having a boss who gives you a new assignment every time you finish one, except the boss is an algorithm and you're not getting paid. Completion anxiety becomes a powerful retention mechanism. Players report feeling compelled to clear map markers, not because they're enjoying the content, but because incomplete objectives create psychological discomfort. This represents a fundamental perversion of play, transforming voluntary entertainment into compulsive behavior. You know that feeling when you see a 97% completion rate and it haunts you? That's not an accident. It's weaponized perfectionism. So let me break down what's actually happening in your brain. The Zygarnik effect is a well-documented psychological phenomenon where unfinished tasks stick in your memory more than completed ones. Your brain literally cannot let go of that unchecked box. Game developers exploit this by creating infinite task lists. Every tower you visit spawns more map markers. Every quest you complete unlocks 3 more. It's like psychological quicksand. The more you struggle to complete everything, the deeper you sink into the compulsion. Completion anxiety triggers when you see those percentage meters. That 97% completion rate, your brain interprets those missing 3% to be a personal failure. It creates genuine stress in you that won't resolve until you find every last collectible. It's the same mechanism that makes people unable to leave a jigsaw puzzle unfinished, except game developers can manufacture infinite puzzles. And I encountered this earlier today. I was playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2. I had 100% Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1, or at least so I thought. The game crashed, apparently, while I was doing the downhill jam level, and the result of that was that some of the objectives didn't complete. So even though I hate that level, and even though I was ready to move on to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, I went back and completed those objectives because having it sitting there at 93% was going to drive me crazy. Knowing I did those and didn't get credit for them, first of all, because the game crashed, but knowing those weren't done, I had to go and do them. And developers know that. And that's why they keep putting these checklists and completion percentages in our games. And that's why Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is such a tremendous breath of fresh air. It doesn't use your psychological weaknesses against you. It's not trying to exploit you. It's crazy that alone makes it Game of the Year for 2025. That makes it Game of the Decade. It's not trying to exploit humanity's psychological tendencies. Amazing. Amazing that they can make a game that is not designed to exploit people's innate psychological weaknesses, and it can still be successful. Not only can it be successful, it is easily the best game I have ever played. And I'm going to do a review fairly soon. It's the only game that I can truly say is flawless. So you have these checklists, and you have this quest log, and good lord, do I hate the quest log and opening the map and seeing your objectives there and following your stupid little compass to the next objective, because cognitive offloading happens when those things are present. Cognitive offloading is when external systems, like map markers, compasses in games, replace your internal thinking. When you can just follow a compass to your objective, your brain literally shuts itself off. When games provide mini-maps and quest markers, your brain stops creating mental maps of the world, and you literally become dependent on the UI to navigate, like using GPS so much that you can't find your way home without it. So compare this to something like Clair Obscur, which I put more than 130 hours into at this point, which deliberately has no mini-map. As I noted in my written review, players can't simply navigate a yellow triangle on a blue plane and must actually pay attention to the environment. And the result is that you actually learn the world's geography. You recognize landmarks and you explore with intention rather than following waypoints like a drone. The dopamine systems that quest completion triggers mirror those activated by drugs of abuse. Variable reinforcement schedules maximize psychological impact, and that's a fancy way of saying that sometimes giving you a reward motivates you more to do the task that sometimes gives you that reward. The unpredictability of rewards from loot boxes, rare drops, and achievement unlocks creates stronger conditioning than if you were to get consistent rewards. And over time, players develop tolerance, requiring increasingly elaborate reward structures to maintain engagement. More importantly, though, these systems replace intrinsic motivation with extrinsic rewards. Instead of exploring because discovery is inherently rewarding, players collect items because numbers go up. Instead of engaging with narratives because stories are compelling, players complete quests because progress bars fill. The activity becomes instrumentalized. Play becomes work. It's like turning your favorite hobby into your day job, except it doesn't pay you, and it somehow feels even less meaningful. And perhaps no single mechanic better illustrates the problem than quest markers and minimaps. These systems fundamentally alter how players interact with game worlds, creating what researchers call cognitive offloading. The brain stops developing spatial mental models because external navigation aids handle all of those functions. In other words, it's GPS for your brain, except that it makes you dumber instead of helping you to avoid traffic. Players report spending more time staring at the minimap than actually getting lost and exploring the world. because of the minimap, they don't ever actually get lost. They always know where they're at. The game world becomes reduced to a series of waypoints connecting to objectives, with everything between them treated as obstacles to efficiency rather than opportunities for discovery. It's like traveling through the most beautiful landscape on Earth, but spending the entire time staring at your phone's GPS app. It fundamentally alters the way you view the world. Instead of focusing on the world and discovering the things in it, you are focused on the objectives, the waypoints on your map, and everything that is in the way between you and those objectives is something you view as an obstacle. It's something that makes you less efficient. It's something that is getting in the way of you playing the game somehow, right? Even though, like, traversing to that objective is playing the game. And I think the fact that I've been even playing the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater series is really indicative of this entire thing, because I don't find the gameplay to be fun. I don't enjoy playing a level over and over and over looking for one stupid water valve. I just want to find the water valve and move on to the next level so that I can then find the objectives there and get frustrated because I can't find one, ultimately Googling it. And once I get to that level, I'll just want to complete the objectives so that I can move on to the next level. But I won't actually move on to the next level when the next level becomes available. Because, like, let's say you complete 7 out of 10 objectives, opens the next stage. I'm going to remain in that first stage until I complete all of the objectives. This is the case despite the fact that I wasn't enjoying the game. It controls like and it's simply not fun to play. I wasn't enjoying the whole mechanic of playing for 2 minutes trying to complete objectives. I just wanted to complete the objectives to move on to the next stage, which also had objectives that I just wanted to complete in order to move on to the next stage. I wasn't playing the game because I enjoyed it. I was playing the game because I was compelled to check everything off the checklists. And I think it's revealing that I would view the entire stage as an obstacle getting in the way of me completing those objectives, when traveling across the level to get to those objectives is literally the game. But the levels themselves were irritating me because they were making it difficult for me to complete the objectives. And despite that, despite the fact that I wasn't enjoying that whole process, I 100%ed Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1. And I'm going to 100% Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 because I've already started that process, and now it's sitting at like 13%, and yeah, it's going to drive me crazy if I don't get it up to 100%. But all of these things, like mini-maps, quest markers, quest logs, they create learned helplessness. Players become unable to navigate without their assistance. More critically, games designed around quest markers often lack the environmental storytelling, distinctive landmarks, and meaningful directional dialogue that would make exploration without markers viable. It's a self-reinforcing cycle. Markers enable lazy design, which necessitates more markers. Nintendo deserves special recognition here for perfecting the art of making players feel lost without their digital crutches. Try playing any modern Zelda game without the map open constantly. Suddenly you realize that Hyrule is basically a bunch of identical hills and copy and pasted trees. At least when you get lost in real life, you might discover something interesting, but get lost in a modern Nintendo game, and you'll just find another Korok hiding under a rock, waiting to expand your inventory a little bit. Compare this to classic RPGs like Morrowind, which provided detailed directions like, go along this road till you pass the big oak. We call it Widow's Oak. Right past it, go right. Go along the small pathway until you see some rocks. Modern games with quest markers simply update your UI and never tell you which direction to look for your target. Like a quest giver in Skyrim isn't going to say, yeah, head east until you reach the bandit camp. He's going to say, yeah, go to the bandit camp. He's not going to tell you where it's at. He's just going to add a marker to your map. The real tragedy isn't just that individual games become boring, it's that entire genres converge on the same mechanical templates. The Ubisoft Tower becomes synonymous with lazy open-world design. Climb a structure, reveal map icons, move from marker to marker in mechanical succession. As Assassin's Creed creator Patrice Desilets jokingly apologized, sorry, it's my fault for unleashing towers on gaming. And honestly, he should apologize. This standardization eliminates the possibility of genuine surprise. When you know that the most noteworthy encounters will only appear at points of interest, exploration becomes predictable pattern recognition rather than authentic discovery. Maps become to-do lists, where players avoid 90% of the map because they already know there's nothing there, because if there was something there, it would have an objective marker on it. And the psychological impact extends beyond individual games. Players develop metacognitive expectations that shape how they approach all games. The icon avalanche problem overwhelming players with completion objectives, it trains them to think of virtual worlds as productivity software rather than spaces for imagination and agency. Meanwhile, Nintendo looked at Ubisoft's tower formula and thought, you know what this needs? More grinding. So they gave us shrines scattered across Hyrule like someone sneezed collectibles onto the map. At least Ubisoft's towers had the decency to be visible from a distance. Nintendo makes you hunt for their content like digital Easter eggs, except the eggs contain disappointingly similar puzzle boxes, and the reward is usually another puzzle box. So the encouraging news, I guess, is that some developers have recognized these problems and pioneered alternatives, proving that not everyone in the industry has Stockholm Syndrome. Take Clair Obscur, for example, the best counter game I've ever seen. It counters everything that is bad in modern gaming. And honestly, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild revolutionized open world design by using towers differently. They reveal terrain, but they don't populate maps with objective markers. Instead, players must manually scout points of interest, fundamentally changing how exploration feels. Nintendo accidentally made exploration feel like exploration again, which is like accidentally inventing fire when you're trying to rub two sticks together to make a smartphone. And Outer Wilds demonstrates how curiosity-driven discovery can replace checklist completion. Designer Alex Beecham created a game where the sole purpose of exploration is to answer questions about the world you're in. No external rewards, no completion metrics, just the intrinsic satisfaction of understanding. It's a revolutionary concept, but it shouldn't be. What if games trusted players to be curious instead of treating them like lab rats who need constant pellet dispensation? So these alternatives prove that engagement doesn't require exploitation. Games can trust players to explore organically, provide meaningful choices, and respect their autonomy. The key is designing for intrinsic rather than extrinsic motivation. So here's a revolutionary idea. What if players played games because they were fun, instead of because their brain chemistry was being hijacked? So again, take Clair Obscur Expedition 33, a game that completely rejects the modern quest system template. There's no minimap, no quest markers, no completion percentages. Instead, players actually have to pay attention to the environment, because developers trust them to be able to navigate like human beings rather than GPS-dependent zombies. And the result is that after 130 hours, I'm still discovering new details in areas that I visited dozens of times. When games don't spoon-feed you objectives, you actually engage with the world instead of just clearing it like a to-do list. The quest system epidemic represents a broader crisis in how we think about interactive entertainment. When games prioritize retention metrics over player satisfaction, completion rates over genuine engagement, and behavioral manipulation over creative expression, we lose something essential about what makes play meaningful. We've turned the medium that should celebrate human agency into a sophisticated people-farming operation. Dragon Age Inquisition's Hollow Quest design wasn't an accident. It was the inevitable result of importing industrial management techniques into creative spaces. The MMO template transformed players into digital pieceworkers, measuring success through productivity metrics rather than experiential richness. We've basically recreated the worst parts of the gig economy, except at least Uber drivers get paid and don't have to fight dragons for their trouble. But recognition is the first step to recovery. As developers acknowledge these problems and experiment with alternatives, we're beginning to see a return to design principles that actually respect player agency. The success of games like Breath of the Wild, Outer Wilds, Elden Ring, Clair Obscur suggests that audiences are hungry for authentic exploration rather than sophisticated task management. It turns out that people actually want to have fun with their entertainment. Who could have predicted that? Nintendo deserves both blame and credit here because they helped perfect the art of digital labor with their collectible heavy design, but they also showed us that exploration could still work when you trust players to be human beings instead of completion-obsessed robots. So they're kind of playing both sides of the war between good and evil. The problem is the evil side pays better and requires less creativity and less work. So the next time you boot up a game and see a map covered in objective markers, ask yourself, am I playing or am I working? Are you exploring a world or clearing a checklist? Are you having an adventure or performing digital labor that makes minimum wage look generous? The answer might surprise you and might change how you think about which games you choose to play. Gaming can be more than sophisticated behavioral manipulation disguised as entertainment. It can be a space for genuine discovery, meaningful choice, and authentic play. But only if we recognize the difference between games that respect our humanity and games that treat us like very expensive lab equipment designed to generate engagement metrics. The choice is ours. We just have to remember that we're the players, not the products. So thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe to the video. Definitely leave a comment. Let me know what bothers you most about Dragon Age Inquisition, or maybe I'm wrong about Clear Obscure. Maybe there's a flaw in it that I overlooked. Definitely let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.